This episode is brought to you by Circle. What is Circle? First of all, it's a beautiful shape. It's consistent, inclusive, but it's also a place to build USDC, a digital dollar that's actually dollar-backed one-to-one. At Circle, they're building a future where money will travel at the speed of the internet for fractions of a penny. It's the place where crypto meets stability, where local businesses meet global customers, and the US dollar meets USDC. Visit circle.com/Spotify.
Welcome to the High Volume Hiring Podcast. I'm Stephen Rothberg, the founder of College Recruiter job search site. At College Recruiter, we believe that every student and recent grad deserves a great career. This podcast features news, tips, case studies, and interviews with the world's leading experts about the good, the bad, and the ugly when it comes to high volume hiring. Thanks for joining us. Today's guest is Max Armbruster, the CEO of Talkpush and host of the Recruitment Hackers Podcast. Max, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Stephen. Congrats on the new podcast. I'm excited to be here.
Well, cool. Yeah, congrats is good. We'll see at the end of the show whether the excitement carries over or not. But so before we get into the meat of it, and I have a few questions for you. For the listeners, why don't you tell people kind of like a little bit about yourself and what you're up to?
Yeah, thank you. As you said, I'm the CEO and founder of Talkpush. We are a recruitment automation platform which specializes in high volume situations. So we work with customers all over the world that hire typically thousands of people and of talent, and oftentimes thousands of the same people. So they're large operations with many employees, and some of them with a very high turnover. So they're always hiring. And so we have fun trying to automate that process so it goes as fast as possible. How I ended up in this space is, a story of career accidents. And it had to do with, I think, being in a market. I was based in Singapore when I launched, or when I first had the idea of Talkpush, and working a lot in Southeast Asia and in markets where there's very high unemployment and a lot of job seekers. And I was looking for ways to make it easier for employers to access and evaluate them in a way that wasn't available in the market. I can go deeper into the background story, but that's how I ended up doing what I'm doing.
I think that listeners immediately are thinking, it's like, oh, okay, I can totally see why Max is a guest on this show. So thank you. Also, just as a little bit more background, when I was thinking about who would be a good guest on this show, you definitely jumped to the top of that list. Partly because of the podcast that you host, and also partly because, I think it was probably 2018 or 2019, you were one of the contestants in, I think it was called the Death Match, which was a competition amongst startups at a TA Tech event. And our CEO, who also happens to be my wife, was one of the judges. And for the record, she was a huge fan. It was great. You did a fantastic job of laying out the business model, where your place was. It was very compelling. So some of our listeners will know of Talkpush as one of the leading chatbots, although I know you do a lot more than that. For the listeners who don't know what a chatbot is, maybe we can start there. Help us understand, from your vantage point, what is a chatbot? What kinds of employers can best use them? And why would an employer want to add a chatbot to their recruitment tech stack?
I mean, the chatbot, one of the first questions I ask, everybody knows what a chatbot is conceptually, but then deciding how to implement it, it's harder to visualize for some people. So the first question people should ask themselves is, where does it live? Does it live on a phone number? Is it an SMS bot? Does it live on a website to convert the traffic coming into the website? Or does it live in an app? Or does it live in an app also includes something like Facebook or Instagram or another app that or like WhatsApp, for example? So that's the first question. It's like, where is the bot going to live? And then, of course, what question is it going to answer? And if you want to take your traffic from point A to point B. What are those points? Will it eventually take it to a point C? And there is chatbot technology now that can carry that understands the situation in which the candidate or lead is, and figure out contextually, okay, this is somebody at the very start of the hiring process, or in the middle, or at the end, and based on that, answer things differently. So that's the first question. And then, what a chatbot is and does. I mean, it takes so many different shapes and forms. But the great advantage for me is that it can be used at the very front to engage with people who aren't necessarily deeply committed to applying for the job, and who are not necessarily in an active job seeking mindset, or who are just kind of like exploring things. So you can lure them in. And then if you choose a communication channel, which is their favorite one, let's say SMS, for example, well, you can continue that conversation throughout the journey of the candidate. So you've got very high stickiness and high response rate, high read rates, compared to if you move them into email, for example, or another communication channel. But I mean, you can have a chatbot that lives on email as well. It's just to illustrate one of the advantages of chatbots. And of course, the technology is now available where you can ask enough questions to someone where you get a pretty good idea of who they are, and you don't have to ask for their resume at all. So for segments of the population where resumes don't tell you that much, that could be enough.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you hit on that point, because so much of the high volume hiring space, it's retail, warehouse, etc. I don't need to see what your degree is. I don't need to see what your major was from 14 years ago. I probably don't even need to know all that much information of previous jobs. But I do probably have to help you understand, where is the job located, what are the hours, what's the pay, any kind of qualifications, and then maybe ask you some questions. When are you available to start? How many hours a week are you looking for? The kinds of low-level rote questions that a recruiter might get bogged down with. I think that chatbots can do a remarkably good job with that, and then really help accelerate that through the hiring process. Also, I would think, Max, that a lot of your employer clients experience candidates coming to their site or communicating with them via SMS at all different kinds of times of day and night, weekends, etc. It's kind of hard to staff for that. But a chatbot doesn't sleep, right? It's there 24/7. So what is a chatbot? What kinds of employers can best use them? And why would an employer want to add a chatbot to their recruitment tech stack?
I mean, I think everybody has had experience interacting with a chatbot by now. Different homes for the chatbot. Imagine the chatbot, it has to live somewhere. So depending on where it lives, it would have a different purpose. If it lives on a website, typically it's to improve conversion rates, or to bring in people with a low engagement. So if somebody is just kind of like passing through, they're not really ready to apply, a chatbot will help to increase the conversion rate. There's another type of bot which can live inside an app, and that can be inside an actual application, or inside Facebook Messenger, Instagram, WhatsApp, and other applications. And these are messaging apps that are used by people to talk to their friends very often. So if you have a chatbot there, you're going to have a very good read rate, open rate, and so you've got a real advantage in terms of capturing the attention of your audience. And then, of course, you can have chatbots that live on SMS and other areas. And one old notion I'd like to dispel is the idea that a chatbot is text only. You can, if you're on a website or on an app, you can do a lot of things with a chatbot, including collect and receive images and voice and video and even documents sometimes. So it's really a new way of interacting, which it's a new UI. It's, the website is now 25 years old. Well, chatbots can do almost anything that a website can do in a sort of conversational Q&A format.
Interesting. So if I've got a call center and I need to hire 1,000 people a year for it, I could guide them through that process, answer questions that they might have about where's the location, what are the hours, what's the pay range, the typical kinds of questions that a candidate might have. but then I can also put them essentially through a screening process, record a short video. So I can see from your typed answers that you have a good command of, say, the English language, but I can't tell from that how heavily accented you might be. And in some environments, that's really critical.
Yeah, I mean, you could consider that the father or the mother of the chatbot was the IVR, the interactive voice response system. When you called a bank and you would type in your code and you would say 1 or 2 to pick your menu options. Those were effectively chatbots, and they can take many forms and shapes now. So to go back to your example, in a call center environment, most of them have figured out a way to generate a fair amount of leads. The job is not for everybody, so they have to check if the working conditions are going to be suitable for the candidate. And then, yes, ideally, if they can collect at the same time enough information to feel confident that this person deserves a job offer, then they've got a huge edge on the competition. So today, with technology like ours, they could ask not just if you want the job, but also they could figure out if the person has a decent command of the English language and good pronunciation and things like that. And the chatbot can also immediately connect them to the calendar of a recruiter and say, great, you sound perfect for the job, pick a time there. So you can really do end to end all the way to sending an offer letter and do it all on chat, basically.
This episode is brought to you by Circle. What is Circle? First of all, it's a beautiful shape. It's consistent, inclusive, but it's also a place to build USDC, a digital dollar that's actually dollar-backed one-to-one. At Circle, they're building a future where money will travel at the speed of the internet for fractions of a penny. It's the place where crypto meets stability, where local businesses meet global customers, and the US dollar meets USDC. Visit circle.com/Spotify.
It's definitely not, from a recruitment standpoint, what I'm used to from interacting with like a hotel chatbot or an airline chatbot. What time is the flight, and some basic kinds of questions like that, where I have a customer service representative on the other end.
If you're lucky.
Yeah, if you're lucky. This is very true, and sometimes it's, no matter what you ask, the answer back is, call a human. And then you kind of have to wonder, well, what's the point of the chatbot to begin with? Another story for another day. Before we jumped on this recording, I had a look at your LinkedIn profile and try to remind myself some of the things that you've done. And one of the things that jumped out at me there was that you had some text there that says something to the effect of that with a good recruitment automation system, like Talkpush, that employers can expand their talent pools, increase their conversion rates, shorten their response time, and massively, all caps, lower the cost per hire. Walk us through why that happens, because I'm totally in agreement, but people who aren't familiar with chatbots might just be looking at, oh, it's another expense. But what I think what you'll be able to really help them see is that this is actually something that's going to greatly reduce their expenses, not add to their expenses.
Well, there are some customers that I don't think they need it as much as others. So maybe I could answer the question by flipping it around in the negative. If you're collecting 10 to 20 applicants a day and you've got a couple of recruiters working in your operation, do you want to spend a few $1,000s on an automation platform and a chatbot? Perhaps not. Perhaps you'd be better off paying your 2 recruiters some overtime and ask them to get through their inbox a little bit faster. But there is a point, and it's usually around 4 or 5 recruiters, where specialization comes in, and where usually at that point you have somebody in the team that's really good at buying traffic and generating traffic. It can be from marketplaces and job boards or social media. And when that person cracks that code, then the problem is you're going to drop your conversion rate from lead to hire from maybe like 10%, you hire 1 out of 10, to maybe you're going to hire 1 out of 30 or 1 out of 40, because now you're generating a lot of traffic. And when you're at that point, it's not it's financially impossible to call all 30 or 40 candidates to hire that one. So it becomes very expensive. And so once you figured out how to generate a fair amount of traffic, then the chatbot really comes in handy. I think that's the tipping point. And the massive amounts of cost saving are mostly internal cost saving. So how do we eliminate those mindless phone calls and screening phone calls that happen at the front of the funnel, and also potentially in advertising, by improving your conversion rates, you wouldn't need to spend as much on advertising, but mostly just in terms of manpower costs.
Yeah, and I think one thing that a lot of employers don't realize, I think the ones that do a lot of high volume are more likely to realize that than those who don't. But still, even amongst some of the high volume, they don't get the metrics back about their drop-off rates, their conversion rates. And there's study after study showing that usually well over 90% of candidates that go to the ATS do not apply. I'll talk to an employer once every month or two and ask them sort of, what is your click to apply rate? How many candidates have to go to the ATS to convert into an application? And first of all, most of them don't actually know. And some of them that think they know, I remember just a couple months ago, big healthcare system, and the guy who was in charge of employment branding, so he was basically working with job boards and other vendors like that. He told me it was over 90%. And it's like, there's no way. It's not over 90%. And what he was talking about was how many candidates who start the application process actually complete it. That's really different than how many candidates who go to that page even start it. And if you can engage those people with a chatbot, then you're going to see, I think, far more starts and far more completions. And to me, that's where that much improved conversion rate, click to apply, start to apply, completion, apply completion to interview, et cetera, comes into play. So what we're really describing, I think, is where chatbots, CRMs, et cetera, sit in the recruitment funnel. In my mind, they're not at the top of the funnel because they're not out there finding the candidate or having that first point of engagement. That's more suitable for an ad, whether that's on a job board, whether that's on Google, Facebook, display ad someplace, a billboard beside the highway. But once that candidate goes to the employer's site, that's where I think tools like chatbots, CRMs, and ATS become so important. And I would characterize those as being middle of the funnel, meaning the employer first has to get candidates into the funnel, perhaps through some kind of sourcing effort or advertising a job opening. And do you see it the same way, Max?
Yeah, I picked up a couple of things that I disagreed with in your statement. I mean, generally, yes,
Cool.
Advertising is not the job of the bot. There is one exception to that, which is if you have an existing database, if you have past candidates, how do you re-engage with them? Well, a chatbot could be a great way to do so. Send a message to 1,000, 10,000 people, ideally something that is personalized, where you do first a research on your database to say, I want to see everybody in that location who had this job interest, and then I'm going to send everybody a message that's personalized. Dear first name, just wanted to catch up. Tell me about your current situation. Click here if you want to find out more about our jobs in this domain. That's text recruiting more than chatbot, but it could be the start of a chat. So it can help on sourcing. But yeah, generally, yes, you're right. The advertising is a separate segment, and that is the top of the funnel. However, you said then it's to bring the traffic to the website, and that's where I disagree. Is I would say maybe the website's not the best place to bring the traffic, even if you have a very nice ATS and a very good job landing page and great options, and it's visually very enticing. There are many segments of the population where that's just a distraction. People want to apply. They want quick answers. They want to know if they're hired. Are they going to find out if they're hired on their career website? Not really. So do you really need to send them there? It depends on the job type. So most of my customers, and we work with big Fortune 500 companies, they if I ask them what's the percentage of your hires coming from that visit your career website, it'll be less than 10% for sure.
Wow. And so feel free to anonymize, a client, like where you don't name who they are, but maybe give us an example industry-wide or industry-wise kinds of role where if the candidates aren't going to the employer's career website, where are they going?
So I don't think I need to anonymize because it's on our website. We work with companies like Walmart, Accenture, McDonald's, big name like that people will recognize, and then smaller ones. And they have presence on job boards, on Facebook or Meta, on Instagram, and sometimes in billboards in retail. Sometimes they put a QR code on a bus, and all of these are call to actions that are sent out to the market to ask the candidates apply and then start a chat. And that chat can then be housed, depending on the geography, we will put it in different places, but in the US, it would be SMS, and perhaps in the Philippines, they would go to Facebook Messenger, and in Mexico, it would be WhatsApp, for example, or in Europe.
Interesting. So they're walking down the sidewalk, they see a bus, and there's an ad there, and there's a QR code. They yank out their phone, take a picture of it. Most of the new smartphones are going to automatically load the browser or app if they've already got an app installed for it, and take you right to the page. And so that's going to be served by Talkpush then, right? They'd be interacting with Talkpush right from the beginning. Yeah,
but they wouldn't know it. The bot is branded under the customer, but our technology is behind it. And of course, like I said, it's a bit like building websites 20 years ago. You have to personalize, and everyone has their idea of what their bots should sound like, because you want a conversation that sounds like you. You want a website that looks like you, and then you want a chatbot that sounds like you and that resonates. So, an Accenture will have a more serious tone, perhaps, and maybe a McDonald's would be a little bit more playful, for example.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. And you've got to be authentic with that voice and not try to pretend to be something that you're not. Totally makes sense. So Max, before we leave off, listeners who want to get more information about you, about Talkpush, about the weather in Spain, whatever, how should they reach out to you?
First of all, don't go to Spain. It's too hot. And secondly, Talkpush is just the way you pronounce it, talking and pushing. And I'm on LinkedIn as the CEO, so that works. LinkedIn is the go-to.
Awesome.
So or hello at talkpush.com.
Oh, there you go. That's emails always welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today on the High Volume Hiring Podcast. We appreciate your support. Please go to www.highvolumehiringpodcast.com to subscribe for free on your favorite app. Review it. 5 stars are always nice. And recommend it to a couple people you know who want to learn more about how to best hire dozens or even hundreds of people. Today's podcast has been a co-production of Evergreen Podcasts and College Recruiter. A special thanks to our producer and engineer, Ian Douglas, and the rest of the team at Evergreen. I'm your host, Stephen Rothberg, the founder of College Recruiter. Each year, we help more than 7 million students and recent grads find great new part-time, seasonal, internship, apprenticeship, and other entry-level jobs. Our customers are primarily Fortune 1000 companies, government agencies, and other employers who are hiring at scale. They advertise their jobs that require 0 to 3 years of experience on our niche global job search site. For more information, go to www.collegerecruiter.com/advertising or email me directly, Stephen@collegerecruiter.com. Cheers.
Imagine how fast we could solve the world's biggest problems if more SaaS startups would gain traction sooner. Welcome to the Tech Entrepreneur on a Mission podcast. This podcast is dedicated to sharing experiences from B2B SaaS CEOs who are going above and beyond to deliver change that is noticed. You will hear their secrets and learn what is required to build a SaaS business that the world starts talking about and keeps talking about, and how to overcome the roadblocks to do so.